Okay, welcome in. I'm going to be previewing, I should say, Week 14's matchup of the National Football League. There are, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six teams that do have their bye week, and I will take a look at them at the bottom of the screen in just a moment once I'm done doing my previews for this upcoming week. So, heading into Week 14, my overall record from wins to losses is 135 to 60. So I'm technically 75 games above 500. So unless for some crazy reason I lose out the remaining 5 weeks of the season, I'm hoping that I did an okay or good enough job, I should say, and can stay above 500 by the time the season is over. Okay, so let's dive into Week 14. I can't believe there's only 5 more weeks left of football. This is very depressing. As we have an NFC North matchup between the 11-1 Detroit Lions and the 9-3 Green Bay Packers. Both these teams are on winning streaks, so the Lions are on the hotter of the two winning streaks. I believe they've won 10 games in a row, which is absolutely absurd, and it's also a franchise record. I think this is going to be a very close matchup. I don't think either team is going to run away with this game, especially with how the Lions played against the Bears last week. If they played like that against the Packers, they can easily get burned because I'm not going to lie, Jordan Love has definitely stepped up his game, especially at the start of the season when he was like a turnover machine in every single game. And they're playing very well. And if you go look at any other division, if you're 9-3 at this point in the season, you're more than likely in first place. But that NFC North is so dominant because the Vikings, if not mistaken, are 10-2. So they're right in the middle of that mix. So it's hard to believe if you're a Packers fan, you're 9-3, but you're third in that division. Just goes to show how strong the North really is. I'm going to give the edge to the Lions in this one, but just a slight hair. I guarantee if they didn't take their foot off the pedal and they left the gas or left their foot on the gas last week, they could have easily run over the Bears and could have won by like 20, 30 points. I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure they're up 16 to nothing at halftime. So they had a big lead at half. Unfortunately, they let the Bears back in the game, but due to a late hiccup by the Bears, whether it's their quarterback, their coach not calling a timeout with 30 seconds to go, the Lions ended up escaping last week with a crucial win and a big win over their NFC North opponent. So yeah, I will give the Lions the slight edge against the Packers. Again, as long as they can keep their foot on the gas and put the pedal to the metal, that's what I was looking for. That's what they got to do. And who cares if you end up running up the score? The whole point is to win. Doesn't matter by how many points, as long as you win. If you have a big lead, you got to hold on to that lead. You can't let the other team get any momentum and come back and possibly tie it or win it, especially in your home barn. So yeah, Detroit for me should get the win on Thursday night. The Miami Dolphins are 5-7. The New York Jets are 3-9. The Jets, they're not technically eliminated, but one more loss, and you can guarantee that they will officially be eliminated from the playoffs. I've been telling everyone for weeks, and maybe even a month, if not more, that there's no way the Jets are making the playoffs. And even if they did, they'd be 8-9. Again, they'd have to rely on so many other teams ahead of them in the standings to lose out the remaining 5 games or 4 games, respectively. And yeah, that's not happening. The Dolphins should get this matchup. They're going to be more desperate. If they happen to win this game, they'll only be 2 games back of the Broncos, I believe, for that last playoff spot in the AFC. So a very critical game for the Dolphins if they want to, like I said, have a chance and compete in a playoff spot because the AFC East has already been won. There's no way the Dolphins can catch the Bills. So yeah, I believe Miami should win over the Jets. The Minnesota Vikings, I just talked about them. You can see they are 10-2, taking on the 6-6 Atlanta Falcons. The big storyline of this one is obviously Kirk Cousins is playing against his former team. I think he was with Minnesota for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then his contract ran out, and then Atlanta ended up picking him up. Now, at the start of the season, I would have said that Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta would be a match made in heaven. 13 weeks later, I think they're just about ready to have a divorce. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I feel that their patience, or Atlanta Falcons' patience with Kirk Cousins, is very, very thin. I feel that if he has any more turnovers or if he loses this game, that you can almost guarantee he's going to lose the starting job for the rest of the year because there's no excuse as to how poorly they're playing, considering they're still technically in first place in that very soft NFC South division. But a loss here, and yeah, you might want to start looking elsewhere to see if there's any other backup jobs because there's no way Atlanta would want to keep him around. So, with that being said, I got the Vikings all day against the Falcons. The 2-10 New York Football Giants have technically been eliminated from the playoffs. Are taking on the 4-8 New Orleans Saints. The Saints are 4 games below 500. I don't see a scenario where they even squeeze into a playoff spot, considering I'm pretty sure Washington has the last playoff spot and they already have 8 wins. So, yeah, unless for some crazy reason every other team in the NFC loses the remaining 4 and 5 games, I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be any playoffs for the New Orleans Saints. But I believe they should get the win over the Giants. Okay, now we got the 10-2 Philadelphia Eagles playing against the 3-9 Carolina Panthers. The Eagles should take this one, but I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy game. Bryce Young has definitely turned a corner, to say the least, this season. If you compare his stats and how he played at the beginning of the season, and he got benched, and now he's starting to, find his groove, it's night and day. So I believe the Panthers will put up a fight. Again, they have nothing to lose. They would love nothing more than to play spoiler. And if they could possibly win against the Eagles and say Washington wins against whoever they play, then or if maybe they have their bye, but then they'd only be a game behind the Eagles for that NFC East crown. So there's a lot at stake. I'm sure the Eagles want to get a win. They don't want to do what they did last year when I think they lost their last 5 or 6 games and ended up dropping out of the division race. So I'm sure they want to get a victory in this matchup. And if they do, they would technically be 3 games up on Washington for that first spot in the NFC East. And then if they happen to win in week 15, then they can almost guarantee that they'll have that division wrapped up before the season ends. So the Eagles should win this one, but I think it'll be closer than what a lot of people might suspect. All right, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 9-3. They're first in the NFC North, taking on the 3-9 Cleveland Browns. Now, this was the Browns team from 10, 15 years ago. I'd say 3-9, they're trash, they're no good, they're a dumpster fire, blah, blah, blah. But they're not a bad team for 3-9. You might think, what are you talking about? They're 6 games below 500. They're almost guaranteed not to make the playoffs. But, I mean, Jameis Winston, he's a decent quarterback, and he's not great. I wouldn't have him as my number one guy. The only reason he's there is because obviously Deshaun Watson went down earlier in the year, so they needed somebody to step up. And I still seen this stat against when he played against the Broncos just on Monday that he had himself a Jameis Winston night. He threw for almost 500 yards. I'm pretty sure he had 2 passing touchdowns, but he also had 2 interceptions. He had 3 interceptions, and 2 of them went to his own end zone for touchdowns, respectively. So there was 14 points that he gave up. So if that happened to anybody else, it would be like, what the heck is going on? But when it happens to Jameis Winston, you're almost like, it's expected, if you know what I mean. The Browns did beat the Steelers just 2 weeks ago at home, so I think they're very comfortable playing against Russell Wilson, and they could easily make his life a living hell. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett had 3 sacks in that game. So if he can get to Russ and make Russ panic, whatever the case may be, Cleveland could possibly go in Pittsburgh and pull off an upset, but that's a pretty big if. I think Russ, he's cooking in Pittsburgh. I don't know why he couldn't cook in Denver. I don't know. Maybe it's the altitude. I have no idea. But he's doing something right in Pittsburgh, and he could easily get them to 10 wins after week number 14. So I will predict that Pittsburgh wins this one, but I don't think it's going to be more than like by 10 points. I really think it's going to be a closer game than what a lot of people anticipate. All right. Now we're off to Tampa Bay as their 6-6 Buccaneers are playing against the 2-10 Las Vegas Raiders. For the Raiders, they lost last week. They're now officially eliminated from the postseason. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when it looked like they had no hope in catching the Atlanta Falcons for that first spot in the NFC South, now they find themselves tied with Atlanta. So this is a very big game for Tampa Bay. I don't see a scenario where both the Falcons and the Buccaneers make the playoffs, only because there's a lot of really good teams in the NFC wildcard. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Washington has 8 wins. So realistically, both the Buccaneers and the Falcons would be 2 games behind them for that last wild card. So I truly think that whoever wins out this division will be the one team from the NFC South that is guaranteed to make a postseason berth. I will give the edge to Tampa Bay in this one. I think they are, again, a very desperate team. They would love to get back, I guess, NFC South champions, and their second one with Baker Mayfield. And if they did it last year, there's no reason why they can't do it again this year. So as long as they can stay healthy and Kirk Cousins can keep crap in the bed in Atlanta, I don't see why Tampa Bay can't compete or possibly get that NFC South crown. Okay, now off to the AFC South as we have the 3-9 Tennessee Titans taking on the 2-10 Jacksonville Jaguars. There's really not much to talk about both these teams. Jacksonville officially eliminated last week when they lost to Houston, and Tennessee, they lost to the Washington Commanders pretty badly as well. So I don't see either of these teams really outplaying the other. I know Trevor Lawrence is gone for the rest of the year for the Jaguars, so I'm pretty sure they're starting their backup now, if I'm not mistaken. And God, this is a coin flip, honestly. I don't think either team has really shown me much that they can dominate the other team. But just for spits and giggles, I'll give the edge to the Titans. Again, I really wish I had more to talk about, but we have 2 really poor teams and 2 teams that are very highly likely not making the playoffs. It's hard to find a lot to talk about. All right. The Arizona Cardinals are 6-6. I believe they're second in that the NFC West division, taking on the first place 7-5 Seattle Seahawks. Who would have guessed that with 5 weeks to go, you're not even talking about San Fran? What the hell happened there? Obviously, injuries played a major factor into why they're playing so poorly, but I'll give the edge to the Seahawks in this one just slightly. I think Geno Smith has proven he's a pretty decent quarterback. He's not going to be an elite top 10 quarterback in the league, but he'll help you win. And I mean, just 2 years ago, in his second year, I believe, with Seattle, if I'm not mistaken, he led them to a wild card spot. Unfortunately, they fell short against the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken about that particular game. But there's something about this team. Who would have guessed you get rid of Pete Carroll and you're just as good, if not better, than what a lot of people expected you to be this year? I thought Seattle may have been in second place or third, depending on how about the Rams situation. But there was no part of me that said or thought that Seattle can easily get the NFC West crown. But here we are. And if they can beat the Cardinals, they'll be 2 games up on them with 4 games remaining. So a very critical game for both of these squads. Obviously, if Arizona happens to win, they could possibly bump themselves back in to a first place in that division. So very critical game for both these teams, but I will go with Seattle. All right, the 10-2 Buffalo Bills are taking on the 6-6 Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to give the edge to the Bills. They're playing lights out. Like they've just absolutely dominated the 49ers at home. And I'm not trying to say that the Rams are as bad or as poor as the 49ers are. But this Bills team, they're playing with a big chip on their shoulder. I've been saying this for weeks. This team wants to get to a Super Bowl, and they want to win badly. And they don't care by how many points they beat you by. They just want to win. I'm sure it'll be a nice treat going from having like a foot of snow at home to being warm inside an arena in LA. I would probably take that any day of the week. But it doesn't matter if they're home or away. The Bills seem to be dominant wherever they play. And for the Rams, this has been a wishy-washy season. I'm pretty sure they started off 1-3 or 1-4, and then they got back to 500, and then it's been win loss, win loss, win loss. Now, if they keep up with that momentum, I believe they could probably lose this game, maybe win in week 15, and then we'll see about playoff positioning at that point. But yeah, a very disappointing season to say the least. Not that it's the end of the world, because they're only 2 games behind Washington for that last playoff spot. So there is hope. But again, if you win one, you lose one, you win one, you lose one, you're not really bringing any momentum into the following week. So that could really hurt your chances, especially this late in the season when you're trying to make a push for a playoff spot. Okay, so staying in the NFC West, I've talked about the 49ers a few times before I'm actually getting a chance to talk about them again when they play the Chicago Bears. These teams are only separated by 1 game. The 49ers are 5-7, the Bears are 4-8. So if for some crazy reason Chicago went into San Fran and won, they would move above them in the standings. And I'm sure they would love nothing more than to possibly squeak out a few more wins and see if it's possible for them to compete in the playoffs. But there's a lot of good teams in that NFC. Hell, the 49ers could pull this one off and go on a 4-game winning streak after this and make the playoffs. So big game for both these squads. But if Chicago loses this one, and they probably will, they'll drop to 4-9. And then I think there's very little to no chance that they make the playoffs, because when you're 5 games below 500, if that is the case, good luck making any noise in January. All right, the Sunday night matchup could decide the fate of the AFC West title, as we have the 11-1 Chiefs taking on the 8-4 Los Angeles Chargers. I think the Chiefs got this one, but I know I've been saying that they should win realistically by like a 2-score lead or a 3-score lead, but their defense hasn't been really that great, and their offense isn't scoring more than like 20 points a game. So there's something different about this Chiefs team. They are 11-1, and they really should be respected, but there's been a lot of close games that they narrowly pulled one out. The one that stands out to me, being a Broncos fan, is obviously when they beat Denver earlier by a blocked field goal. That still stings to this day, because had Denver won, they'd be sitting at like 8-4 instead of 7-5. Or sorry, they'd be sitting at 9-5 rather than, or 9-4 rather than 8-5, and that could have been pushing them even further into a playoff position. I mean, the Broncos kept it close. The Raiders kept it close just last week. So I don't see why the Chargers can't go into Kansas City and pull off a win, or at least make it close. I really think this is going to be a very close matchup. I mean, all of Kansas City games this year have been close. It's not like they've been blowing teams out of the water. With that being said, it pains me to say this, because I love Justin Herbert. He's a great quarterback. They have a good team around him, and Jim Harbaugh, their coach, who obviously signed with LA in the offseason, he has some success as a head coach, and he has beaten teams that he shouldn't have beat. So this could be a potential upset in the making, but man, it's hard to bet against the Chiefs. I'll put it that way. It's really hard. So they should improve to 12-1. If they drop to 11-2, it's not the end of the world, because they'd still technically be 3 games up or 2 games up on the Chargers for that NFC or AFC West division. All right. The Dallas Cowboys are playing host to the Cincinnati Bengals. Dallas is sitting at 5-7. The Bengals are 4-8. It doesn't matter if one team's better than the other. One's in the NFC, one's in the AFC, so it really makes no difference if the Bengals go in and absolutely destroy the Cowboys, because them beating the Cowboys has no effect on them unless they were to meet in the playoffs, which would be the Super Bowl. But let's be realistic. I don't think either the Bengals or the Cowboys are making the playoffs this year. There's just too many good teams. I'm pretty sure the teams that have the wild card spot are the Vikings, the Packers, and the Seahawks. So, and the Seahawks, I believe, have 7 wins. So the Bengals are technically a game and a half or something like that behind or ahead of whoever I was talking about. So I apologize. I just worked all overnight, so my brain is definitely not 100% here. So I do have a tendency to kind of drift off and say some random stuff, but I did catch myself before I went too far. So I just wanted to say that before I kept on going. I'm going to give the edge to the Bengals in this game. I think even though they're not technically out of the uh, race, this if they lose this game and they drop to 4-9, they're done. They're not making the playoffs, and they're not going to be an 8-9 team squeaking in and doing a wild card spot. So I did predict that Bengals would win last week against the Steelers, and I got burned. Will I get burned 2 weeks in a row? It's possible, but there's just something about this team that it's like never say quit, never die kind of attitude, and that's fantastic as long as you're being successful. But you're 4 games below 500 with 5 games remaining. Very critical game for the Bengals. As for the Cowboys, if they were to win this game, and they could possibly win this game, they'd go to 6-7, and then they'd only be a game and a half, maybe 2 games back of a playoff position. Again, depends on how other teams around them, especially above them, fare this weekend. So neither of these teams are eliminated just yet. But if one team were to lose and for sure get eliminated, I'd say it should be the Bengals, because even if the Cowboys drop to 5-8, they could possibly go on a 4 game winning streak, finish 9-8, and depending how the teams above them did, they could sneak into a playoff spot. But without Dak, I don't think they're really making much noise in the postseason. All right, that takes care of my Week 14 preview for the National Football League. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.